Hello, friends. So, in my last video, I spoke about many of the reasons why women choose to stay in abusive relationships, why they choose to stay in domestic violence. And one of the reasons I mentioned was to protect their children from so many other things, to protect their children from harm, to protect their children from having to be in a broken relationship, broken homes, going from one house to the other, and so many other reasons. And right now, I would like to speak about the effects that domestic violence has on children. A lot of it from just observing the effects that domestic violence had on mine, personal experiences. So, and I did mention in one of my previous videos that children who witness domestic violence were three times more likely to commit domestic violence as adults or just mistreat other children, be bullies and things like that. And so living in a home where they are constantly experiencing aggression, domestic violence, seeing an abuser, a father, the mom's boyfriend be abusive to her, they will carry those experiences with them, and that would be a significant predictor of domestic violence in their life. So there could be several children in the home, and each of them will experience domestic violence in different ways because it will affect each of them in different ways. Because they see one parent being physically hurt, and that takes a toll on the child, whether it's a boy or a girl. Many children will live with the fear that something will happen to them because eventually, many times, not always, but many times, children do also become the target of abuse. One of the most important factors that help children heal after the woman gets out of the abusive relationship, after that abusive relationship ends, it's just a lot of patience, caring, compassion by a nonviolent parent. Older children, like middle school, high school age, sometimes want to be protective of the abused parent. In this case, I'm going to talk from a woman's standpoint. Although some men go through abuse, some men are victims of domestic violence, but I'm just going to take this angle because I can only speak of what I know personally, right? So some children, and I see it more common in older children that want to be protective of the mother. They won't leave her alone, or they may try to call for help, but a lot of times these children are so hurt and live in so much fear that they may not call for help. Because if they call for help, they fear that more trouble will come. So you see that silence and all that pain and suffering manifests itself in behavior at school, in aggression, and just bad behavior all around. Some older children sometimes want to be intermediaries. They try to fix the relationship. They try to get the parents to get along or stop fighting. Sometimes they even may take sides. Sometimes boys are so much manipulated by their abusive fathers that they take the father's side and become really disrespectful, very disrespectful and violent and aggressive towards the mother because of brainwashing, because the father accuses the mother, because the father says it's her fault, or she's going to cause the family to break down, or she keeps provoking me, or your mom did this. They bring adult issues to the children and manipulate the son to take the father's side, and then the boy also becomes aggressive and disrespectful toward the mother or his sisters. And of course, that teaches the child, boy or girl, to learn these wrong lessons. The girl will learn that this is how she's to be treated, and the boy will learn that this is how he has to handle his problems. And a lot of those boys sometimes become really abusive and aggressive towards their own sisters. And I've seen that a lot as well in other girls, at school or play yard. So children experiencing this may oftentimes repeat the abusive relationship that they've seen in their father or in their parents, and they may repeat that abusive relationship in other children. Why? because, as I mentioned in my previous video, they learn that it's okay to control somebody else's behavior, or feeling, through violence, through intimidation, to threats. I've seen an older child threaten a 5-year-old with, if you don't do this, I'm going to hit you. If you don't do this, I'm going to break your nose, and just, an older child, 10, 11 years old, take a 6-year-old little girl and just slam her. Like, I've seen those type of behaviors that just break my heart, to see an older boy just mistreat and abuse a younger girl because that's what his father taught him, by seeing, by showing him, by allowing him to see him mistreat his own mother. So the effects of domestic violence is in children sometimes show up immediately, and sometimes it takes a while to manifest. For me, the primary one that I have, personal experience with was the post traumatic stress disorder. And that is so devastating on little children to see this, and then they live with that for a long time until they get intervention, until they grow and become older and wiser enough to understand what happened, and then try to get their healing and restoration from it. But even if the child is not physically abused at home, just being in that situation for a long time, seeing their mother being thrown and punched and beaten and yelled at, causes trauma, and they too are also going through the domestic violence, and it can cause dangerous changes in the development of the children's brain, especially if they're young, like toddlers, 3, 4, 5 years old. That also can cause changes in their brain. These children can experience nightmare, they can have problems sleeping, they can develop anger, they can be irritable, they can have learning issues at school, not because they can learn, but because they can't concentrate. And I'll touch a little bit more of this later on, but I've been doing some research on children that can't focus, like that have ADHD, and I'm finding out that ADHD is not necessarily a neurological deficit, but it's a coping mechanism to stress and trauma. And I would like to talk a little bit more about the psychological effect, maybe in my next video. But definitely PTSD, just like, a woman can go through PTSD because of a trauma, a person can go through PTSD because of an accident, an injury. A man can go through PTSD because of the military, veteran. And as a psych nurse, I work with veterans that dealt with PTSD and other mental health issues. Now imagine a child, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 years old, teenagers that are dealing with PTSD because of domestic violence, the nightmares, children that, have been out of diapers and pull-ups for years, 8, 9, 10-year old children that are bedwetting, right? And then you're finding children that were in an abusive relationship, and some of those abusive relationships, they also became the target of, and you see them, 10, 11 years old, beating up little kids. It was in the news, I think it was last year, where an 11-year-old was on a school bus sodomizing a 5-year-old for months. Because somebody did that to him, he probably became the victim of domestic violence. He probably became the victim of an older adult, doing that activity to him, and then he went and repeated it on a younger child. So likewise, if a child is in a home where he's watching his mother, or his caretaker, could be an auntie, being beaten or abused, he has a higher propensity, higher chance of repeating that behavior on another child. So the mental health strains are coming for children, are very common for children who witness domestic abuse. Okay, and sometimes that can transfer into physical, somatic symptoms like headaches. When you have a child that's always complaining about a stomach pain and there's no medical reasons for them, you take them to the hospital, or you take them to the pediatrician and they can't find anything wrong with them, but they always have a tummy ache for something. Even us as adults, we know that stress can cause ulcers. We know that stress can cause, upset stomach. You know that when you're eating and you're stressed out and you're in a hurry and you're unhappy and upset, that can cause indigestion because you're not digesting your food properly. Imagine in a school age children, they report headaches, and you're like, you can't figure out what's wrong with the headaches, you can't figure out what's causing it. You're thinking, oh, maybe, oh my gosh, I hope it's not a tumor. It's not that. The child has been stressed. The child has post-traumatic stress disorder, The child has experienced so much trauma that they get these headaches, they get these stomach pains, and sometimes we can't figure out what it is. And the worst part about it is that the little infants, the 1, 2, 3 year olds, may not even know how to vocalize what they feel with PTSD. Another one is anxiety, and I've seen that a lot in children. At home, I've seen it where children are just like always on the edge. They're always anxious, they're jumpy, they're always cranky. You have a child that experiences that. An older child who experiences the domestic violence becomes really abusive to the younger sibling. And that younger sibling is like always on the edge. They're always anxious, they're always annoyed. Every little thing makes them angry because they live with that expectation of they don't know when they're going to be physically abused. They don't know when they're going to be verbally abused. They don't know when their big brother's going to be bullying them because that big brother grew up watching their daddy bully their mother. So they become like it's almost like they're in this state of perpetual anxiety. And for children that are in school, in kindergartens, the teachers have a hard time because they have behavioral issues, they have emotional issues. And some of those children that are 8, 7 years old, 8 years old, 9 years old, they go back, they revert to the habits of young children. The thumb sack, the thumb sucking their thumbs, bedwetting, right? 9, 10 years old, and they're really whiny. And you're thinking as a parent or as a family member, it's like you're 8 years old, you're 9, you're brilliant, but you're always whining. Like the whining just becomes, it becomes almost abnormal. These children have been traumatized by observing abuse. So, to the teachers hearing this, and I know that teachers know when things are not okay at home, but from a woman that went through it and that has dealt and is, still dealing with trying to repair, trying to love through their children, trying to coach them, trying to find, play therapy and things like that. Children are so damaged by this situation. It is unfortunately that, as I was saying in my other video, that women stay because they want to protect the kid. They don't want their children to be homeless. They don't want their children to go from one home to the other. They want their children to grow up in a two parent home. And the mistake that I did was saying, I'm going to stay for my children. But when you stay, you're exposing your children to more danger because they observe more of this stuff. So I'm going to pause it right here. I'm going to talk a bit more about this on my next video. Okay. Thank you so much for listening.
It is shouting, name-calling, crying, and sometimes even punches, bruises, and blood. It gets louder and louder. They don't think we can hear, but we can, even if we're in the last corner of the house. We're worried that Mum might get killed. We hope it will pass and things will be back to normal, but we are still scared thinking about when it will happen again. It's a really bad feeling in our heart. It feels like it's broken. Sometimes we feel it in our bodies too, and our bones start to hurt. We find it really hard to stay out of it. We try to stop it, but it doesn't work. It's our job to protect our little brothers and sisters. Sometimes we are told whose side we're on. We don't like it. Some adults think children are stupid, but all children have a voice.